Does the board have any questions as to what that recommendation is and what it includes? I believe there's a potential for some confusion as far as what the recommendation might be, and there's been some information shared with us regarding some data that was used for the report. So, does the board, first and foremost, have any questions regarding this recommendation, or just the process in general?
You're talking about the document? We have questions about the document?
Correct.
Let me clarify maybe what you're asking. I don't have any confusion with what's written in the document, but it's not that I agree. I mean, I think we've got enough information from Jviation that we're educated in what we need to do. Or, where we hit, so we need further discussion. I don't think we're accepting what it has written. I'm not. But I don't need to keep, I don't need further information from there. So to answer the question, if I heard what you said, I understand what's been recommended. I understand where it came from. Do I agree totally with it?
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, so to your point, Mel, what is it you don't agree with as far as their recommendation?
Well, number one, I think the most heated part of it is the recommendation for reversionary lease. Now, right now, what's in front of us is just for the commercial. We've already taken out the other hangers. At this point, it's not on the table. But if we make a recommendation to the council for reversionary, non-reversionary out there for the forward of the private hangars, we're going to have to revisit this one. I think what we do is we've got the document, we've got a good start. There's good things in it. There's things that are still need to be worked out. So I think we need to release Jviation so we can't keep them in the loop of hey, trying to do more work for what they've been hired to do. I think they've done the job for what it is, and we need to, as a board, need to sit down and say, okay, what do we need to do to finish this up? And I think we need to include the hangar group and like we talked about in the work meeting, if we would, and get into the discussion and finish it up, and then take the completed document when we're ready for a recommendation to the council.
So your first concern would be that currently the recommendation states that any new leases established at the airport, the recommendation is they should be reversionary leases. That's what
their document
says.
Yeah, their document says reversionary right now.
Okay.
And what's on the table, it says reversionary for commercial.
I think it should be for all of us, what the intent is.
Well,
right.
And see, I don't agree with that.
Can I jump in there and make a suggestion?
Sure.
I understand what you're saying now, but keep in mind that this thing started as a attempt to create a lease rates and charges policy document that addresses a lot of things on the boards to commercial operators, non-commercial operators, the city. As is customary in the industry, these type of documents exist in airports everywhere. So the initial objective, and it was based on a request that the airport board got for a commercial operator that we didn't have the mechanism to answer. So this allows a process to take place when somebody does make an application. It allows the board to function with some criteria set in place. There's some other issues in there that address investments in the hangar. So if somebody were to go replace a roof or make an investment in the hangar, there's a provision for a lease extension for that. So there are things in terms of the operations of an airport that are essential for all parties involved. And the primary objective was not necessarily to address end of lease provisions, although it appeared in the document. But after some discussion, that was struck out. So the majority of this document is done by Jviation that accomplishes the objective set out for them. It accomplishes what the airport board tried to do, which is have something in place to handle those kind of issues, to handle applications, to know how to deal with each request that comes in. We currently don't have those guidelines. So I would say that what you mentioned is important, but that can be addressed down the road with further analysis and further discussion with board groups that involve and owners and others to get more data. And I don't see a reason why that should stop this, a year into it from being, at least in our item, recommended to the city council. Because it doesn't alter any existing lease, and it doesn't tie you, indefinitely for what you can do in the future. And you can do that with a more studied attempt, with more discussion among the different groups. But the meat of this thing, the most important part of this document, addresses a whole slew of important issues that have nothing to do with whether it's reversionary or non-reversionary or how long the term goes. And I still think that the airport needs it, and it's important to, we're going to get a request here probably pretty soon for a commercial operator. Or we might get a request for a lease extension based on an investment. And we still don't have the criteria or anything in place to address those things. So that has been delivered by Jviation, I think it's sufficient.
Okay. So Mel, other than the, any other concerns with this document?
Yeah, I mean, let me clarify. I mean, I'm not, what's in the document is, in my mind, we're 90% there. I mean, it's not, I want to get rid of the document. I'm just saying, are we sure? If we're going to go back to city council and we're going to say, hey, we've got a document, then we need to revisit and put back into it what we also started with. In the future, are we going to go reversionary or non-reversionary? The real question that the city council wants to see right now is what are we going to do forward? Then everything else involves railway.
Right.
And if we're going reversionary forward, then you know what? This is going to be changed.
Right, that was, I think it'd be added to or amended based on those recommendations we
If it's
ourselves.
non-reversionary, it's the same thing. So, I don't, if we approve it with the, I would say if we approve it, we just need to make it clear to the council that what we're approving, what we've got before in this document, we make it clear and walk through it, and we still have to come back with a 10% on that.
This is only for the new stuff moving forward, right?
But even then, to Mel's point, as I also stated in my email, there are topics which the document doesn't address, either because we removed them or because they've become apparent through this process. We need to find solutions for it. We've had discussions as far as whether that should be done by us or whether there should be, in our bylaws support this, the creation of a technical assistance committee. And I use those words only because they're in the bylaw. Where that committee can be formed, we can define the composition of the committee, we can define who's on the committee. They will in turn answer, give the recommendations to us, why they came to their recommendation, and in turn we'll be able to turn that to the city council. So for those issues that are still ongoing, reversionary versus non-reversionary, obviously one that is a very enormous concern. The end of lease provisions. What else did we miss that we want to?
Well, and at least,
That pertain to the lease. There's no discussion as far as whether or not we should have radius, but that's policy. So.
Well, I think, number one, we've got to, what do we want to do? We already have the three types of networks, more or less. We say, what do we want to do in the future? Hypothetically say it's non-reversionary. Now we go, okay, if the council accepts that, part of that recommendation could be that just alone, or it could be, okay, now are we interested in rewriting some of the leases that are out there right now? How do we renew those when they come to?
The end of life. Yeah, the end of term. Yeah.
But no, that's what I mean by going through a more thorough process to analyze all those things, which should be done and needs to be done. More information across the board with more detailed analysis. But that should not stop this thing, because there's nothing here that contradicts that. You can always go back and have a study, say it takes you 6 months, and you come up with a recommendation about new leases or about end of lease provisions, and you can still retroactively apply that to a category of things that you want to apply it to. So there's nothing that would stop you from doing that. this does not commit you forever to a certain type of a lease, whether it's reversionary or not reversionary. I mean, most of the stuff in here has to do with application requirements, agreements for aeronautical, non-aeronautical, subleasing, transfer of interests, rates and charges that support the fees currently being charged based on a market analysis. So the majority of this document is not to address the benefits of a reversionary versus non-reversionary. And I think you can do that in a work-proof environment for a certain amount of time.
And I think also considering that we don't have currently, correct me if I'm wrong, but do we have inventory right now even to go into a new lease with anyone in the airport? We have Hangar Road, is that one hangar still available for sale?
Yeah, but we would just keep the existing lease in place and they would have whatever's left of that lease.
So as far as new leases, are we even in a position where we can even provide a new lease at this point? Short of building new hangars?
I don't want to answer the question right. We do have interest in construction of more hangars.
And putting that aside, the existing hangars now at the airport.
All the leases are signed and in place.
So the timing on this is, in my mind, this will give us a window to really address what to do with new leases, whether they're reversionary or non-reversionary. Because quite frankly, we don't have any new leases to provide until such time that new hangars are even built.
Well, let's say that the council decided to allow construction of some new hangars. I would suppose you would use the most recent lease you have used, that people are more than happy to enter and pay for. And then subsequently, if you decided to offer something different after a discussion period and analysis, then you give them the option of going back retroactively changing. So I don't think that would stop hangar development from taking place if it's inside.
Right, we can still do
You can still throw it afterwards and decide you're going to change it from this type to that type, you can offer that too.
And I'm thinking as far as prioritizing, what we do have now as far as pressing matters is what to do at the end of the lease. We already have at least 2 individuals who are waiting for that answer, and potentially every hangar owner in this room.
We'll educate you on which 2 hangars,
Don't we have a few people who are wondering what to do?
Well, we have people who are interested in building an airport.
I don't know that.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay. I was under the impression we had a few hangar owners who were waiting to hear this response as far as what's going to happen to what provisions do they have at the end of their lease.
Well, I think it's fair to say anyone that has a non-reversionary lease would like to have more clarity as to what happens after 25 years. I know there's one that's advertised for sale right now.
I think that's
But I think that's been one of the goals, is to give more clarity to what these people can expect.
Well, yeah, if I'm not mistaken, that is a non-reversionary lease, but it's very vague at the end as to what happens. We don't have anything clear cut that we can say, okay, well then, if somebody buys one of these hangars, it's non-reversionary, we write a new lease. They don't take over. I think in essence, what Nadine is saying is we need a lot of the verbiage that's in this, and it's important, but I think what we really need to do is separate that and say, okay, this is great for what we need for anybody that's new, that it comes in place, but we need the caveat to make sure that City Council knows that it's not for all of our existing ones. We need to deal with the existing ones now. And